The Paradox of the Pulsar. Chapter 1. Timestream Navigator. In the void of space, where stars are born and die in silence, the human race has carved out a dominion not only across the cold expanse, but through the malleable streams of time itself. At the epicenter of this conquest sits the Temporal Regulation Authority, TRA, the arbiters of all temporal activity, ensuring that the past is history, the future is potential, and catastrophe is averted at every turn. Their latest concern is not a when but a where, a pulsar with a heartbeat so irregular it threatens to tear the fabric of time. Pulsars, the lighthouses of the cosmos, had become the interstellar mile markers for humanity's temporal voyages, their rhythmic pulsing a beacon across time's ocean. But this one, designated PSRJ 184105000 by some distant astronomer, has begun to beat out of sync, sending ripples that could become tsunamis crashing through the continuum. Enter Kael Zandor, the young prodigy whose meteoric rise through the ranks of the TRA has been nothing short of legendary. A navigator of time with an innate understanding of its ebb and flow, Kael has a mind that dreams in 4 dimensions. But for all his talent, he lacks experience, the kind that only comes with surviving the unpredictable and often unforgiving currents of chronal navigation. As the youngest ever to command a temporal intervention vessel, Kael is tasked with a mission that could cement his name in the annals of time or erase it entirely. The Cronus Wing, a ship whose sleek design belies its monstrous complexity, stands ready, its engines capable of slicing through time as a ship through the sea. Kael's crew, a mixture of grizzled veterans who wear their temporal dislocations like badges of honor and eager young academics eager to make their mark, look to him for guidance. Together, they must navigate the treacherous tides around the pulsar, find the cause of its aberrant behavior, and correct it, because the alternative is a future where every second holds uncertainty, and every minute could be their last. As Kael initiates the launch sequence, a hush falls over the crew. The hum of the temporal drive rises, a prelude to the cacophony of piercing through time's veil. Kael feels the familiar pull, the stretch of existence as time wraps around them, a cocoon of possibility. They are flung into the unknown, towards a star whose light flickers with the power to undo history itself. The pulsar calls to them, its beacon now a warning in the darkness, a siren song for those who would dare to dance with time. The adventure is underway, and the stakes are no less than the very order of existence. For Kael, whose life has been nothing but preparation for this moment, the journey is both a test and a testament. Will he rise to meet the paradox that awaits, or will he become another lost echo in the annals of what might have been? Chapter 2. The Pulsar Directive. Kael stood at the head of the Cronus Wing's conference room, his crew arrayed before him like an assembly of the future's finest. The holographic projector at the center of the table whirred to life, casting the image of the TRA's emblem before fading into the form of Director Althea Crane. She was the face of authority within the TRA, and today her image was lined with the gravitas of their situation. Kael, crew of the Cronus Wing, her voice was both in the room and of some distant place. The pulsar you are to investigate poses a threat we have never seen. Its temporal distortions are unlike any resulting from a natural phenomenon. The balance of time, as we know it, is at risk. Your mission: stabilize the anomaly, ascertain its cause, and ensure the safety of the temporal streams. Are we clear? Kael's response was firm, with the quiet confidence of a man who had been preparing for this all his life. Clear, Director. We'll begin our approach and make contact with the pulsar within the hour. As the briefing concluded, the crew sprang into action. The navigational officers double-checked their chronal maps, making minute adjustments for the temporal anomalies that were already being reported in the pulsar's vicinity. Engineers reviewed the integrity of the temporal shield that would protect him from the pulsar's erratic emissions. Every member of the crew moved with purpose. They were the chosen, after all, to steer through uncharted time. The Cronus wing made its approach, the pulsar looming ahead like a cyclopean eye, its iris a vortex of impossible geometries. As they neared, the fabric of space-time seemed to shimmer, a mirage caused by the pulsar's capricious nature. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Kael felt a knot form in his stomach, not from fear, but from the sheer exhilaration of the unknown. He ordered the activation of the temporal engines, and a surge of power thrummed through the vessel. The pulsar's distortions intensified, visible now to the naked eye as they cascaded against the ship's shields like waves against a lighthouse. Then, without warning, time slipped. For a moment that stretched into infinity, Kael and his crew were unstuck from the flow of seconds and minutes. The chronometers spun backward, forward, then stopped altogether. They witnessed sunrises and sunsets in the blink of an eye, stars being born and dying in silent cascades of light, history playing out in reverse and fast forward around them. It was a taste of the chaos that awaited should they fail, a universe where time had no meaning, and life, no anchor. As quickly as it had come, the moment passed, and the instruments stabilized. They had crossed the threshold into the pulsar's dominion, where their mission, their very existence, balanced on the edge of forever. Kael locked eyes with his crew, each face reflecting a silent determination. They had seen the potential of their undoing, and now, more than ever, they understood what they were fighting for. The voyage into the heart of time had truly begun, and the crew of the Cronus wing stood ready to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 3: Echoes and Paradoxes. In the suffocating grip of the pulsar's temporal wake, the Cronus wing's journey took a turn towards the surreal. Kael, at the helm, felt as if they were navigating through the very synapses of time's mind, where memories of what was, could have been, and might yet be, were all entangled. The first trial struck as a whisper of duplicity. The crew was going about their tasks when Ensign Lyra, the biologist, reported a startling anomaly. "Captain, I'm seeing myself. She's working at my station." Her voice trembled with a cocktail of wonder and existential dread. The crew rushed to witness the spectacle as two Lyras, one slightly older, her uniform adorned with medals yet to be earned, worked side by side, unaware of each other. This duality spread like a contagion. Crew members found themselves face to face with versions of their own being. Some younger, eyes full of naivety, others older, faces etched with the lines of decisions weighing on futures that may now never come to pass. These encounters were disconcerting, forcing the crew to confront the lives they led and the choices they made. Kael's own trial materialized in the form of a version of himself that had never joined the TRA, a free-spirited renegade of time who whispered secrets of an unfettered existence spent surfing through eras like waves. This other Kael wore rebellion like a cloak, and the seductive allure of such freedom was not lost on the young captain. These apparitions of might have been seeded a silent discord among the crew. Some were enamored with their alternates, engrossed in tales of lives filled with different choices, while others were repulsed, viewing them as living monuments to regret and warning. Yet, through these trials, the greatest challenge was to their cohesion. A chasm threatened to split the crew into factions of what was real and what was mere possibility. Kael saw the danger. The mission could not afford a fracturing of wills. He called a meeting, addressing the crew with the authority that his position demanded, yet his voice carried the empathy of shared experience. "We are voyagers on the same turbulent sea, facing waves of what could be. These specters of potential are not us. They are but shadows cast by the pulsar's erratic light. We are defined not by the multitude of paths we could have taken, but by the one we tread together now." The crew listened, and in their eyes, Kael saw the flicker of unity reignite. With a renewed sense of purpose, they turned to the enigma of the pulsar. Utilizing the insights gained from their encounters with their alternates, they began to piece together the nature of the fractured timeline, each anomaly a clue, each paradoxical meeting a piece of the puzzle. By embracing the trials placed before them, Kael and his crew forged a new understanding of their mission. They were not merely repairing a fault in time. They were affirming their existence, choosing their reality with every action they took within the pulsar's chaotic domain. United once more, they steered the Cronus wing deeper into the heart of temporal instability, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 4: Ruins of Time. The crew of the Cronus wing, now sailing on the turbulent seas of the pulsar's influence, discovered a planetoid that should not have existed, a celestial body caught in a temporal loop, displaying eras in a maelstrom of epochs. Ruins of an ancient civilization appeared before them, a cityscape stretching across the planet's surface like the bones of a once great beast of culture and technology. With the pulsar painting the sky above in a tapestry of time's fabric, Kael led an away team to the surface. Their boots stirred the dust of ages as they moved among towering structures, their designs both alien and eerily familiar. The architecture spoke of a people who had not only mastered the art of building, but had also woven time into their very stones. Hieroglyphs adorned the walls, glowing with residual temporal energy, hinting at the civilization's understanding of the pulsar, which they revered as a deity of time, a keeper of eternity's gate. The crew, with their expertise in temporal mechanics, deciphered the symbols to reveal a narrative of harmony and then catastrophe, of a society that had thrived in the pulsar's predictable rhythm until the rhythm became erratic. Within the central edifice, a temple to the pulsar, they found the key, a device, or more accurately, a schematic for a device that promised regulation of the pulsar's pulses. But the knowledge was incomplete, segments lost to time, the final pieces existing in a moment out of sync with their current now. Kael was faced with an ordeal that could very well be his last. To retrieve the missing knowledge, he would have to navigate a rift in time, a fracture that neither light nor matter could traverse without being scattered across history. It was a one-way trip into the unknown, a thread that once pulled, could unravel the very essence of his being. Volunteering to shoulder this burden alone, Kael stepped into the rift, the fabric of existence closing around him like the folds of a curtain. The crew, left behind, could only wait, their gazes fixed on the maw of the rift, hoping for their captain's return. Within the rift, Kael was adrift in the stream of time, with echoes of the past and whispers of the future for company. His perception fragmented, his body phasing through states of being and non-being, he clung to the image of the pulsar, the constant that anchored his mission, his resolve. And there, in the eye of temporal chaos, he found it, a chamber outside of time, where the ancients had stored the culmination of their knowledge. It was a place of convergence for all possible timelines, a library of what was, what could be, and what must never come to pass. Kael's hand trembled as he reached for the tome that held the missing pieces, data encrypted in a tesseract, a book with no beginning or end, its pages a loop of perpetual knowledge. With the information secured, Kael turned to leave, but the rift had other intentions. It convulsed violently, threatening to cast him into oblivion. Using every ounce of his navigator's instinct, Kael charted a path back to the temporal stream where his crew awaited. It was like threading the needle of reality with a thread made of his own life's potential. As he emerged from the rift, the crew exhaled breaths they had not realized they'd been holding. Kael's ordeal was over, but their mission had reached a pivotal moment. With the schematics in hand, they could now create the device to stabilize the pulsar and mend the fabric of time, preventing the future from unraveling at its seams. Chapter 5: Harmony's Blueprint. Back aboard the Cronus wing, Kael's ordeal in the time rift had left an indelible mark on him. His eyes now held flecks of stardust, his presence seemed to echo with the whispers of eternity. But there was no time to reflect. The knowledge he had wrested from the heart of chaos held the key to salvation. The crew gathered around as Kael laid out the Tesseract schematics. It was a blueprint for a device, a chronal stabilizer, capable of synchronizing the erratic beats of the pulsar to the steady rhythm of the universe. The construction began at once, a symphony of cooperative expertise. Engineers and physicists worked hand in hand, piecing together exotic materials and quantum components that seemed to blur the line between technology and magic. The device took shape, a marvel of temporal engineering, intricate circuits intertwined with crystalline structures that pulsed with potential. It was the embodiment of hope, a hope to mend the tear in the continuum that the pulsar had wrought. Activation was a ceremony of breathless anticipation. Kael, with a solemn nod to his crew, initiated the chronal stabilizer. A wave of energy rippled outwards, a silent herald to the monumental moment. The timelines, once fractured and wild, began to coalesce, a convergence of reality's myriad threads into a single, harmonious tapestry. But as the crew watched the miracle unfold, anomalies began to surface. Instruments detected discrepancies, pockets of resistance where time refused to mend. Within these bubbles, the laws of physics wavered like reflections on water, reality doubting itself. Kael and the crew worked feverishly to adjust the stabilizer, tuning it as one would an instrument to perfect pitch. It became clear that these anomalies were symptoms of a deeper affliction. The pulsar's erratic behavior was not a natural occurrence, but a consequence of an ancient experiment gone awry, a past civilization's hubris in attempting to harness time's infinite power. The crew's elation turned to a race against the clock. They traversed the vessel, combating the anomalies that threatened to unravel their work. With each success, the resistance diminished, the anomalies fading into the corrected stream of time until only one remained, the epicenter of the pulsar's discord. As they faced this final anomaly, the realization dawned on Kael that the chronal stabilizer was not a cure but a bandage. The pulsar, a wound in time's flesh, required a more drastic intervention. The device they had built could stabilize, yes, but to heal, to truly correct the pulsar's rhythm, would require a sacrifice of unprecedented magnitude. Kael gazed at the pulsar, its surface a maelstrom of temporal energy. He understood what he must do. The path back had been a trial, but the road ahead was the crucible that would test the metal of his spirit and the very essence of his being. Chapter 6: The Edge of Forever. The Cronus wing was alive with a frenzy of activity as Kael and the crew raced against time itself. The anomalies had been quelled, but the pulsar's core remained untamed, a beast of raw chronal energy thrashing against its impending shackling. As they monitored the device's performance, a troubling prognosis emerged. Kael observed the readouts, his face a canvas of dawning horror. The chronal stabilizer was working, but it was too effective, drawing in vast amounts of temporal energy only to become a ticking time bomb. An explosion of such magnitude would not only tear the pulsar apart, but would send shockwaves through time, fracturing the continuum into an infinite mosaic of broken realities. The crew looked to Kael, their eyes seeking guidance, their faces etched with fear and hope. In this moment, Kael understood the weight of command. The decisions of one could determine the fate of many. With the clarity that comes from standing at the edge of oblivion, Kael hatched a plan. He would not allow their efforts to become an epitaph for the universe. Prepare to modify the stabilizer, he commanded, his voice the calm in the eye of the storm. We're going to redirect the explosion. The crew sprang into action, recalibrating the device to transform it from a dam holding back the tides of time into a conduit. As they worked, Kael took his place at the helm, his hands steady even as his heart raced. The pulsar beckoned, its pulsing surface a siren's call to the final act of their Odyssey. With bated breath, Kael watched the seconds count down. The device reached its critical threshold, and he gave the command. A beam of pure temporal force surged from the stabilizer, striking the pulsar at its heart. The pulsar absorbed the energy, its surface convulsing, its rhythm gaining pace until it reached a crescendo of stability. Then, as if exhaling the breath it had held for eons, the pulsar settled into a regular pulse, its beat now a lullaby where once there was a battle cry. The timeline solidified, reality affirmed, and the future secured. Kael allowed himself a moment of relief, his gaze meeting those of his crew, a silent acknowledgement of their shared triumph. But there was no time for celebration. The energy redirected into the pulsar had consequences. They were flung backwards, riding the shockwave of the explosion through time. The crew held fast, their trust in Kael unshaken as the Cronus wing became a vessel not just across space but through history. They emerged, the pulsar now a distant but stable light behind them, in a time before their journey began. Kael had done more than stabilize the pulsar. He had resurrected the natural order. In his hands, he held the elixir to humanity's temporal plight, the knowledge that time, while a river that can be navigated, demands respect for its power and mystery. Chapter 7. Legacy of the Chrononaut. As the Cronus wing steadied itself from the temporal shockwave, Kael and his crew found their bearings. The stars outside looked unfamiliar, ancient constellations told of in myths but never seen by modern eyes. Kael's heart skipped as he realized the truth. They hadn't just ridden the shockwave, they had been sent back in time, far beyond their own origin. The crew stepped onto the planet they had previously only known as ruins, but it was alive, vibrant with the citizens of the ancient civilization. They were greeted not with fear but with celebration, as if their arrival had been long awaited. The hieroglyphs they had seen, the ones prophesying their own mission, surrounded them now in vivid color, their meaning clear. Kael and his crew were the harbingers of salvation foretold by time itself. Kael wandered through the city in a daze, his mind struggling to grasp the reality that he was now a part of history, a fixed point in the timeline he had fought so hard to stabilize. It was then he encountered an elder of the civilization, a keeper of the chronicles. "You have returned," the elder said, a knowing smile creasing his ancient face. "You left us the knowledge to safeguard the pulsar, knowing you would one day come to ensure its creation." The weight of the elder's words settled on Kael's shoulders like a mantle. He, Kael Zandor, had been the architect of his own Odyssey. The device he had constructed in the future had originated here. In this time, information passed down through generations to guide his own hand in the distant future. The final twist unfurled as the elder led Kael and his crew to the pinnacle of the city, where a monument stood, not to the pulsar, but to Earth, a planet lost to them in time, a cradle of life from which they had ventured forth to embrace the cosmos. Kael understood then that this was not an alien society, but humanity itself, evolved and ascendant, the descendants of those who had fled a dying Earth to find refuge in time's embrace. In the grand tapestry of the universe, Kael's journey had been a thread stretching from the past to the future and back again. His actions had set humanity on a path of exploration and survival, a predestined loop where the end was the beginning and the beginning, the end. The realization was profound, the implications staggering. Kael and his crew were not just explorers, but ancestors, their legacy written in the very fabric of time. As they integrated into the society that would one day become a footnote in their own history, they did so with the knowledge that they had fulfilled their destiny, closing a loop in the spirals of time. Kael looked upon the faces of his crew, now a part of something greater than they had ever imagined. They had become the elixir, the cure to a paradox that they had lived, a story that would be told for generations to come. The pulsar continued to pulse, now a steady heartbeat in the night sky, a testament to the paradox of time and the enduring spirit of humanity.